What most people enjoy about being American or who seek to become American are the rights and freedoms that they believe being an American citizen affords, such as freedom of speech and expression or freedom of religion, which are the most ubiquitous rights under the Bill of Rights. Freedom of speech and religion is what most people believe exemplifies democracy, and America is an experiment in democracy. But what about the right to privacy? The U.S. Constitution does not explicitly state Americans' right to privacy. Instead, several amendments to the U.S. Constitution have been broadly interpreted to confer privacy rights to U.S. citizens. The first of these amendments is the Fourth Amendment, which protects people, their persons, houses, papers, and personal effects from unreasonable searches and seizures by the government. The exception is the issuance of a warrant based upon probable cause, supported by oath or affirmation, describing the particular place to be searched and the persons or things to be seized. Next is the Fifth Amendment, which is most notable for protecting against self incrimination and also guarantees that no person can be deprived of life, liberty, or property without due process of law. Then the Ninth Amendment lists in the Constitution certain rights that shall not be construed to deny or diminish other personal rights retained by U.S. citizens, as outlined in the Constitution. Finally, the 14th Amendment prohibits states from depriving any person of life, liberty, or property without due process of law and denying any U.S. citizen equal protection under the law. Although the language paraphrased does not specifically state privacy, most legal scholars and court opinions conclude that the language can be interpreted to extend to privacy. The question then is whether your personal data, specifically that on your mobile device, or any other data created from your online use, is protected by your right to privacy under the U.S. Constitution. 12 states go further than the U.S. Constitution, expressly stating in their respective constitutions that citizens of that state have a right to prevent unreasonable invasion of the right of privacy. The question is how reasonableness is determined and who determines what is reasonable. Some states go further by stating that people have the right to be secure in their persons, houses, papers, and effects against unreasonable searches and seizures, and invasions of privacy shall not be violated. The exception is a showing of a compelling state interest. But what if the invasion of the right to privacy is not by a state or the federal government, or not the subject of state action? What if a commercial entity invades your privacy? Before there was Google or Facebook, there was Axiom. Axiom was founded in 1969 as Demographics Inc. by Charles D. Ward in Conway, Arkansas. Its core focus is collecting, analyzing, and selling customer and business information for targeted advertising campaigns. Sound familiar? But how did Axiom build such a vast database decades before Google, Yahoo, Facebook, and others? Axiom gathered its data from various sources such as public records, consumer surveys, magazine subscription lists, catalogs, and retail purchases. Axiom focused its data collection on gathering information about consumer behavior, interests, and demographics. Axiom's model pulled data versus Google, Yahoo, and others which had the data pushed to them from search. At this point, beginning in the late 1990s, users began to push vast amounts of data about every thought, idea, and subject, and queries about the same fed to search engines. When searches and queries are done on Google, or digital assistants like Siri and Alexa or in your car, and AI search like Search GPT and other AI platforms. Those searches and queries are stored and organically and rapidly feed the algorithms that drive the search engines. That data is cataloged, processed, and monetized. You, the user of these services, trigger algorithms and predictive analytics. We see it all the time when you search for something, then on Facebook and elsewhere, ads pop up about the very thing you just searched. And other digital manipulations are based on data you input on your device. It goes further. Our insatiable need to stay connected to our devices doesn't stop here, particularly with many, if not most people, addicted to social media. Social media use has grown exponentially over the last 10 years, with much of its use on Facebook and Twitter, but mainly on Facebook. This period of more and more people being on social media as a new world order is forming creates a paradox that raises questions rather than presenting answers. All the personal data and content are freely and voluntarily posted on social media today, mostly Twitter X, TikTok, Insta, and others. Many of the apps installed on mobile devices, in particular, fueling much of this rapidly growing social media world, explicitly ask you or inform you that the apps or platforms need access to specific data, folders, or apps on your mobile device, such as contacts, network settings, your camera, microphone, location, and other access. You can accept or decline these terms of use, which often means limited or no access to the app or service. Sometimes you may be prompted to ask the app not to track you. The companies creating these apps and platforms retain the data collected for their use and sell the data collected. These companies know everything about you, like where and what you eat, what you buy, where you travel on holiday, who your friends are, what you do and don't like, etc. If you post all of this stuff, how do you claim it is private? Is it the same as being hacked, or is it different? What about your data or evidence of online use being seized and analyzed without your knowledge? This is the paradox. The U.S. government has several agencies that surveil its citizens' online use. One in particular is the NSA, or National Security Agency. In 2007, the NSA developed a program codenamed PRISM, which the NSA used to collect internet communications and stored data of online traffic from various U.S. internet companies, namely Google and Apple. It didn't matter if the data was encrypted or not. Under the passage of the Protect America Act under George W. Bush, the NSA leveraged the Foreign Intelligence Surveillance Act, or FISA, to target the stored data from internet communications. Remember Edward Snowden? Well, it was Snowden who leaked the existence of PRISM and warned that the extent of mass data collection by the U.S. government was far greater than the public was aware. The Guardian and the Washington Post published this information on June 6, 2013. Many, including the ACLU and others, consider the objectives and actions of PRISM to be an invasion of privacy by the U.S. of its citizens, but also any customer of these internet services. It's not just the NSA and their PRISM program. Other U.S. government agencies also perform surveillance activities, but the target is not companies like Google and Apple. The target? Any mobile device. It has been reported by numerous sources and the subject of a recent documentary that both the Drug Enforcement Agency, or DEA, and ICE, or the Immigration, Customs, and Enforcement Agency, are surveilling mobile devices owned by journalists and activists and alleged terrorists, as well as those they claim threaten the national security interests of America or who seek to dilute the values of America. In the case of the DEA, they are using Graphite, a spyware program developed by the Israeli-based company Paragon Solutions. In the case of ICE, they are using Pegasus, a spyware program also developed by an Israeli-based company, NSO Group. Both of these spyware programs can be deployed to your device without your knowledge, grab any data they choose, whether encrypted or not, and vanish without you being aware. This means apps like WhatsApp and Signal are vulnerable too. Apple claims its new lockdown mode is designed to thwart such spyware attacks. Very few companies and efforts claim they have the forensics expertise to identify a spyware attack from these sources and the nature of the attack. In March 2023, President Biden signed an executive order restricting the use of commercial spyware by the U.S. government, unless such use aligns with America's core national security interests. It's a cliche of any spy movie, where the agent or agency commits some act or action, no matter how extreme, done to protect the national security of the U.S. Now, for context, PRISM, under the NSA, justified its actions pursuant to what they deemed to be specific terroristic acts and actual threats to U.S. national security as outweighing the right to privacy guaranteed by the Bill of Rights. But when and how are the privacy rights of every other American weighed against the unknown use of spyware on any device the U.S. government chooses? Because under Biden's order, the use of spyware hasn't stopped and is likely to be increased under the incoming regime. This scenario is not just draconian, but meets the definition of being dystopian. As an American protected by the U.S. Constitution, should you be concerned that your mobile device is subject to a spyware attack because the U.S. government is looking for a particular person or group? How is this different than racial profiling? Well, one way it is different is that your mobile device is not a race, although the data on your device could be targeted based on your race. What if you have a specific last name or search for something deemed of interest by the U.S. government? Does that make you a target of a spyware attack by the U.S. government? What about your privacy rights under the U.S. Constitution or state constitution? Regarding your personal data, your Facebook status and Facebook friends, your tweets, Insta photos, threads, and feeds, your emails, text messages, and calls, your likes, followers, and who you follow. Is your social media ecosphere private? What should your expectation of privacy be? What right should the Constitution guarantee if we potentially and voluntarily waive the right of privacy by divulging everything about ourselves on social media? What obligation do Meta, Google, Apple, Verizon, or others have to protect our data on their servers, in a public cloud, or on your device? Everything we buy with a debit or credit card is tracked and tied to Universal Product Codes, or UPCs, compiled and sold. Everything watched on cable is tracked. Every time we buy gas or purchase an airline ticket, tracked. We leave behind more digital DNA than human DNA. Now, the rabid use of social media and online use exposes us as a potential subject of spyware surveillance by the U.S. government. We have created and provided the personal data we now despise the government for tracking and monitoring. We are feeding the machine. A new world order is forming, notwithstanding the incoming U.S. regime. If more and more autocratic governments gain power with no checks and balances, and with the continued distraction and manipulation of social media, the right to privacy, along with other rights, could be transformed hereinafter.